It all started with a family vacation. You know, the kind where everyone pretends to be happy. But underneath, there's this tension that no one talks about. My name is Jake, and this is the story of how my life, my marriage, and my family were shattered in ways I never could have imagined. My wife, Emily, and I had been married for 5 years. We weren't perfect, but we were happy. Or at least I thought we were. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but we loved each other. My dad, Richard, had always been a bit of a character. He was the kind of guy who could charm anyone, but there was always something about him that made me uneasy. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I always felt like there was a side to him that he kept hidden. The vacation was supposed to be a chance for us all to reconnect. My mom, Linda, had been pushing for it for months. She said we needed to spend more time together as a family, and I couldn't argue with that. So, we packed up and headed to a cabin in the woods, just the 4 of us. The first few days were fine. We went hiking, cooked meals together, and played board games at night. But then, something happened that changed everything. It was the 3rd night of the trip. Emily had gone to take a shower after a long day of hiking. I was in the living room with my parents, watching TV. My dad got up and said he was going to check on something outside. I didn't think much of it at the time, but then, a few minutes later, I heard a scream. It was Emily. I rushed to the bathroom, my heart pounding in my chest. When I got there, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My dad was standing in the bathroom, his hand on the shower door, and Emily was inside, clutching a towel to her chest, her face pale with shock. "What the hell is going on?" I shouted, my voice trembling with anger. My dad turned to me, his face a mask of guilt. I thought I heard something," he stammered. "I was just checking to make sure everything was okay." But I could see the truth in his eyes. He had been watching her. My own father had been watching my wife while she was in the shower. Felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I didn't know what to do or say. Emily was crying, and my dad was trying to explain himself. But I couldn't hear anything over the roaring in my ears. I grabbed my dad by the collar and shoved him out of the bathroom. "Get out!" I yelled. "Get out of here!" He stumbled back, his face red with shame, and I slammed the door shut behind him. I turned to Emily, who was still shaking, and wrapped my arms around her. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." But the damage had been done. The trust that had been broken between us, between my dad and me, between my family, it was irreparable. That night, Emily and I packed our things and left the cabin. We didn't say goodbye to my parents. We just got in the car and drove away, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. As we drove, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. How could my dad do something like that? How could he betray me, betray Emily, in such a horrible way? And what did this mean for our family? For my marriage? I didn't have any answers. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. The days that followed were a blur. Emily and I barely spoke. We were both in shock, trying to process what had happened. I could see the pain in her eyes every time she looked at me, and it killed me inside. I felt like I had failed her, like I should have been able to protect her from my own father. We decided to stay at a hotel for a few days, just to give ourselves some space. I knew we needed to talk about what had happened, but I didn't know where to start. How do you even begin to have a conversation like that? Finally, one night, Emily broke the silence. "Jake," she said softly, "we need to talk about this." I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "I know," I replied. I don't know what to say." Emily took a deep breath. "I don't either," she admitted. "But we can't just pretend it didn't happen. We need to figure out what we're going to do." I knew she was right, but the thought of confronting my dad, of dealing with the fallout from all of this, was overwhelming. "What do you want to do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know," she said. "But I know I can't just let this go. What your dad did, it was wrong, Jake. It was so wrong." I felt a surge of anger and guilt. "I know," I said, my voice shaking. "And I'm so sorry, Emily. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I didn't see what kind of man my dad really is. Emily reached out and took my hand. This isn't your fault, she said, firmly. You didn't do this, your dad did. But we need to decide how we're going to handle it. We talked for hours that night, trying to figure out what to do. Should we confront my dad? Should we tell my mom? Should we go to the police? There were no easy answers, and every option felt like it would only make things worse. In the end, we decided to confront my dad. We needed to hear his side of the story, even though we both knew it wouldn't change what had happened. We needed to look him in the eye and ask him why he had done something so horrible. So we went back to the cabin. My mom was there, but my dad was nowhere to be seen. When we walked in, my mom looked at us with a mixture of relief and worry. Where have you been? She asked. We've been so worried. I took a deep breath. We need to talk to Dad, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. My mom's face fell. He's not here, she said. He left yesterday. He said he needed some time alone. I felt a surge of anger. Of course, he had run away. He couldn't face what he had done. Do you know where he went? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. My mom shook her head. No, she said. He didn't say. But Jake, what's going on? What happened? I looked at Emily, and she nodded, giving me the strength to continue. Dad did something terrible, I said, my voice breaking. He molested Emily while she was in the shower. My mom's face went pale and she sank into a chair, her hands trembling. No, she whispered. No, he wouldn't do that. He couldn't. But I could see the doubt in her eyes. She knew, deep down, that it was possible. My dad had always been a bit of a flirt, but this was something else entirely. We need to find him, I said, my voice firm. We need to confront him and make him face what he's done. My mom nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'll help. You, she said. I'll help you find him. And so, the search began. We called everyone we could think of, friends, family, co-workers, but no one had seen or heard from my dad. It was like he had vanished into thin air. As the days turned into weeks, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. My dad was gone, and with him, any chance of closure. Emily and I tried to move on, but the shadow of what had happened loomed over us, threatening to tear us apart. It was a month later when we finally got a lead. My dad had been spotted in a small town a few hours away. Emily and I decided to go there together, to confront him once and for all. The drive was tense. We didn't talk much, both of us lost in our own thoughts. I kept replaying the moment I had found my dad in the bathroom. The look of guilt on his face, the way Emily had looked at me with such pain and betrayal. I didn't know what I was going to say to him, but I knew I had to face him. When we arrived, in the town, it didn't take long to find him. He was staying in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, living off the money he had taken from my mom's savings account. When we knocked on the door, he opened it slowly, his face pale and drawn. Jake, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily, what are you doing here? I felt a surge of anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady. We need to talk about what you did. My dad looked at me, his eyes filled with shame. I don't know what to say, he stammered. I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. Sorry? Emily said, her voice trembling with anger. You're sorry? Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any idea how much you've hurt us? My dad sank onto the bed, his head in his hands. I know, he said, his voice breaking. I know I've hurt you. I know I've ruined everything. But I don't know why I did it. I don't know what's wrong with me. I felt a pang of sympathy for him, but it was quickly overshadowed by anger. You need help, I said, my voice firm. You need to get help, and you need to take responsibility for what you've done. My dad looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. I will, he said. I'll get help. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. But I knew it wasn't that simple. There was no making this right. What he had done had changed everything, and there was no going back. We stayed in the motel room for hours, talking, arguing, crying. My dad admitted everything. How he had been struggling with his own demons. How he had let his desires get the better of him. How he had betrayed us in the worst possible way. By the time we left, I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. My dad was no longer the man I had thought he was. He was broken, and so was our family. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Emily and I tried to rebuild our relationship, but the trust between us had been shattered. Every time I looked at her, I saw the pain in her eyes, and I felt the weight of what had happened. My mom was devastated. She had always loved my dad, despite his flaws, and the revelation of what he had done had broken her. She filed for divorce, and my dad moved out of the house, leaving her to pick up the pieces of her life. As for my dad, he checked himself into a rehab facility, seeking help for his issues. I didn't know if it would make a difference, but I hoped that he could find some kind of peace, even if it was too late for us. Emily and I started seeing a therapist, trying to work through the trauma of what had happened. It wasn't easy, but we were determined to save our marriage. We loved each other, and we didn't want to let my dad's actions destroy what we had built together. But even with therapy, the road to recovery was long and difficult. There were days when I felt like we were making progress, and days when it felt like we were right back where we started. The pain of what had happened was always there, lurking beneath the surface, threatening to pull us under. One night, as we lay in bed, Emily turned to me and said, "Do you think we'll ever be able to move past this?" I didn't know how to answer her. I wanted to say yes, to tell her that we could overcome anything. But the truth was, I didn't know. What my dad had done had changed us in ways we couldn't even fully understand. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I do know that I love you, and I'm willing to fight for us, no matter what." Emily smiled, a small, sad smile, and she reached out to take my hand. "I love you too," she said, "and I'm willing to fight too, but it's going to take time." I nodded, squeezing her hand. "I know," I said, "and I'm here for you, no matter how long it takes." As I look back on everything that happened, I can't help but wonder what you, the audience, must be thinking. How would you react if you were in my shoes? Would you be able to forgive someone who had betrayed you so deeply? Would you be able to move on? Or would the pain of what happened always be there, lurking in the shadows? I don't have the answers to these questions, and I don't think there are any easy answers. What my dad did was unforgivable, but at the same time, he's still my dad. I can't just erase him from my life, no matter how much I might want to. And then there's Emily. She's the love of my life, and I would do anything to protect her, to make her happy. But how do you rebuild trust after something like this? How do you move forward when the past is always there, haunting you? I don't know what the future holds for us, but I do know that we're trying. We're trying to heal, to move on, to find some kind of peace. It's not easy, and there are days when it feels like we're fighting a losing battle, but we're not giving up. Thank you for listening to our story. Thank you for being here, for bearing witness to our pain and our struggle. I hope that, in some small way, our story has touched you, has made you think about the complexities of family, of love, of betrayal. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching to the end. If you want to hear more stories like this, please check out my other videos. And if you have any thoughts or advice, please leave a comment below. We're all in this together after all. Thank you.